sequel to Devil May Cry 4 called Devil May Cry 5. And you know what? It looks great. It looks fucking good. It looks like they redid a little bit of the game mechanics. Devil May Cry 4 kind of did a little bit, but it was still in that very like hack and slashy way. This one looks very fast-paced action, but like it takes place right after, or no, I mean a little bit of time, obviously, after Devil May Cry 4, but it's a direct sequel to Devil May Cry 4 where they introduced Nero, the dude with the badass fucking hand, who was not Dante, and then Dante was still like an older, more distinguished Dante, but he was still a badass and talked shit. And he was also featured at the very end of this trailer, so he's going to be in the game as well. I'm just happy they totally scrapped the whole DMC emo kid Dante game from a couple years ago. This is a direct sequel. I'm glad the way they introduced him, just like, Devil May Cry is fucking back. I'm happy for it. You were even like, oh yeah, I'm not a fan of the series, but it looked pretty good from the gameplay.
Yeah. Well, what I was exactly going to say that. I'm not a fan of this series. We know that. But I am interested to see where this goes, simply because Devil May Cry was always very similar in my mind to God of War, and they just rebooted God of War, and I want to see what their take now is on Devil May Cry.
Yeah, me too.
I'm excited to see it, because if it's similar to God of War, then great, because that's a great game. But if it's different and it's still good, then like awesome. Like we got 2 reboots of 2 games that I wasn't a fan of before.
Yeah. Well, the thing, I knew it was Devil May Cry from the get-go, but like if you remember the DMC game, they had, it was like a short black-haired Dante, which is not Dante at all. And so when they showed Nero had short white hair, and I was like, is this a sequel to that game? And then I was like, oh no, I totally forgot Nero was a big character in Devil May Cry 4, where you pretty much played the game half Nero, half Dante. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's who it is. That's fucking awesome.
Nice.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but I'm just...
No, it's okay.
I got a little scared at first.
And another game from the conference is not necessarily a new game, but Cuphead is getting some DLC and a new female character, Chalice Girl, I believe is her name.
Which is like the name of the cup that she is, right? Or like the little like China thing.
Like there's Cuphead, Mugman, and Chalice Girl, so... The DLC is new levels, new bosses, and new weapons, things like that. So that's cool. More of a good game is always a good thing, hopefully. They can't really do anything wrong at this point. I mean, they're going to charge for it, and I'm sure it's going to be well worth it.
You know what they could do wrong? They could just tweet out a whole bunch of racist and sexist shit. That would probably be wrong.
That would be very wrong.
Probably stray away from doing that, but it could happen.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, well, so that was the big one. What do you have another big one? Because I have like one more, and then the real big one I loved at Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot going on with fighting games this year, but Jump Force was a cool surprise. If anyone has ever played any of the Jump series of fighting games, they are usually jam-packed with anime characters from Dragon Ball Z to Naruto and One Piece, and the list goes on. And they're finally bringing it to home consoles, because it's usually, from what I understand, on Game Boys and things of that sort, and only in Japan usually. It looks like it's going to be a 3D fighter. Saw some gameplay. Looks good. We still don't know a whole lot about it, though.
That we do not. But yeah, do you remember, by the way, I was just whispering, it totally reminded me, do you remember when we first started doing the podcast and you go, we should have an episode like this, and you sent me something where it was just people whispering?
ASMR.
Yeah, ASMR. What does that stand for?
I have no idea.
Exactly. And you were like, yeah, we'll just whisper on the podcast because people like to hear that. And I'm like, what? And you go, it's soothing
but I thought
to
it'd
the
be
ears.
funny.
I don't give a fuck, Fred. I'm not whispering on the podcast. That's creepy.
So yeah, for anybody out there, I said we should do an entire episode as an ASMR episode. Be like, welcome to Game Genies.
Oh, I'm so creeped out by you even doing that right now. I'm creeped the fuck out. I think whispering's always creepy because it just sounds like somebody in a van trying to molest me as a child.
Ryan.
No.
Do you want to be on my show?
Yes, of course I want to be on your show, but like, does that...
Please get in the van.
No! God damn it! I knew it was a van thing! I don't know what
Okay, do you have anything else to say about Xbox?
Of course! I have 2 more things.
Just keep it rolling, baby. I got more too.
Okay, we're only 40 minutes in. We only got 1.5 press conferences left, if you want to even call it that. Okay, just to name drop a little bit real quick. Harold Halibut. Looks like interesting.
Halibut, like the
halibut.
fish.
Looks very interesting. The gameplay, it's an indie game. The style is like claymation, and I believe if you go look it up, Harold Halibut. God damn it!
It was a B
with a B. Halibut. It looks interesting, and if you look at some of the making ofs,
song out of this.
The making ofs on YouTube, it like they did stop motion claymation for the game. So look that up. Another one to just mention: Just Cause 4 was announced. There's weather conditions. You mentioned Jump Force. You didn't mention like what was in Jump Force. We saw Frieza, Goku, Naruto, the dude from Death Wish tease at the end. There's a lot of animes. Essentially, it's a fighting game with a bunch of different anime properties.
I mentioned all that.
Maybe I was just spacing the fuck out. Either way, whatever.
But the world, it looks kind of cool. It's like on Earth or something like Earth. In fact, they might even be in New York City. I think there's a setting in New York City, and it's all like destroyed and shit. So like, I think Jump Force is supposed to be like a group from what I'm like kind of putting together myself, and they're fighting an entity who is kind of like destroying Earth or something like that. So they're here to stop that.
But yeah, and then I'm sorry, I didn't mean to boo you. I was just saying, like, I don't care about New York.
It's fine. We'll move on from Jump Force.
I'm sorry. Okay, so 2 more I really want to talk about. First one. None Light 2.
What?
None Light 2.
I could.
I don't know why. It's late. Whatever. Dying Light 2.
Dying Light.
Also known as
parkour.
Dying Light 2. Parkour. I love the first Dying Light. Me and our buddy Dennis played on the PlayStation 4 when it first came out. It's a parkour game, survival with zombies, apocalypse type of thing. But there's like more than just zombies. There's like creepy monsters that come out at night. So you have to like fortify your base, help out, do your campaign stuff during the day. But at night, motherfucking shit goes wrong. And like that shit just like clicks on. You're like, oh shit.
All of a sudden it's nighttime and then shit.
Because I was like, okay, Dennis, we got to finish this mission. We try to go collect stuff. And then all of a sudden, as we're running back to parkour across the fucking town to our base, it becomes night. And then I'm like, we are fucked, dude. We have to hide from dudes. It's so it was one of the most intense games I've ever played, and it was amazing. First person, parkour, survival, awesome. And this one looks like the human interaction's a lot more at play here. One of the coolest things is you can choose on a mission to, like, for example, they showed helping out a gang to either keep the water supply for themselves, and then it makes it to where you'll attract more gangs because, like, you'll have rivals, or you could just kill the fucking gangs, keep the water supply for the community you have. But the community you have is a very totalitarian. That's the fucking word. Totalitarian regime, and so you're kind of like at the mercy of them, and you have to like play nice with them because they're on you're on their side rather. So it's kind of like, do you want to do that, or do you want to go with the rebels? But that causes more, I guess, interaction with other factions and rebel gangs. So there's a lot at play with this, and that's built upon the original Dying Light, concept, which I think is great.
Yeah.
It looks exciting to me. I'm very excited to play it. Again, the first Dying Light's great. They just stopped doing DLC for that game. That's how much it was free. It was all free DLC. That's how much that developer cared. If I can speak, developer cared about the fans. So
if you're getting Dying Light 2, then you know you're going to have support after.
Exactly.
They've already proven it once. I think they'll do it again.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to talk about this game, but Metro Exodus is kind of in the same realm as Dying Light 2. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. At first, it made me feel like it was just some kind of run-of-the-mill military Russia something.
A post-apocalyptic game.
Right. It ended up being more of like a Doom-style game. And my initial reaction was, like, in the trailer, they just kept showing them reloading guns. I was like, okay, you can reload your gun. And then they showed all these insane fucking monsters, and I was like, okay, always reload your gun. Reload that shit all the time. Watch the trailers for those games.
Well, I mean, like, so to me, I always just thought of it as like another Fallout style game. This one is a little bit different because it's a little bit darker, a little bit grittier. Less goofy, obviously, and there's a lot more just mutations and creatures that you come across on the Metro games.
Mm-hmm.
It's based off a series of books, I believe, as well.
What did you think of We Happy Few?
Funny enough, I bought We Happy Few originally, like when it came out in early access on NetSpot. So I believe
you funded it.
Yeah, I funded it. So I believe I have access when they release the full game this fall. I don't know why I wouldn't. I would assume I do. When I played it, it was just a little bit. It was like a small portion of the game what they were like teasing. It looks great. It's an interesting concept of like.
It's creepy as fuck. From
my understanding, from just playing a little bit and everything I've seen, is you're part of a community. Everyone takes these pills to make them happier, and they wear these fucking masks that are creepy as shit that's supposed to make them happy, and it's like, are you taking your pill? It kind of reminds me of this movie Equilibrium with Christian Bale back in the day, because you would always take a pill to just not feel anything. You would just be emotionless. This one's supposed to make you happy, and it has a very 1950s aesthetic to it, but you're pretty much trying to escape this crazy fucking society, and everyone's like against you, and it's really creepy and it's very intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean camping tents.
And the art style is really interesting and cool.
I think you're interesting and cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh shit! We need to tell everybody you're coming here in like 2 weeks.
Oh, that's right. Ryan and I are finally going to have. We're going to have our first episode ever, in person.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, I haven't seen this motherfucker in like 8 years, so it'd be nice.
Yeah,
and then I booked
the week of
the
25th, right?
25th, yeah. And then I booked my flight to New York, which is going to be in October, late October. So look forward to that as well. Same type of situation. We'll try to do like once or twice a year, us meeting up and doing an episode together. Also, I would love for you to come to PAX South next year.
I think I'm going to try to. When do they do PAX?
January. They do it in January.
Are you Christian Bale?
That's how I was talking about him, so I was just like...
Oh, do you want to talk about the big one?
Oh, though you were talking about what they ended with?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me explain. It was a cool way. Obviously, it was scripted, but it was scripted in a way where it wasn't too corny. It was obviously like, oh, this is scripted, but they did a good job of it. Phil Spencer, who I absolutely love, since he's taken over from Xbox, I know they had their issues. Oh, fuck. Before we talk about this, let's talk about Xbox real quick, acquiring 5 different developers.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big deal. Because the thing is, they were never going to fix their non-first party... Well, they didn't have enough first party games. That's just been the elephant in the room for years. And they're like, we can't fix this overnight. But we are acquiring 5 different developers. Do you have the list, Fred?
I do.
Go ahead and read it off.
So they're acquiring Undead Labs. They are the studio behind State of Decay. Ninja Theory. Last year, they released Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Oh, fuck. Which was a great... And that was actually released on PlayStation first. So good. And then it was released on Xbox. But everybody I've talked to says, you got to play Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. We talked about it in the podcast very early on. I just still have not yet played it, although I need to.
Right. The graphics and the motion capture in that game were amazing. They won an award for that.
I think it might be coming on Xbox Game Pass soon because they just acquired that studio. I feel like in the next 6 months it will be coming on there.
Yeah, I'll go on to Game Pass next, actually. They're going to be putting a bunch of stuff on there next as well. Speaking of We Happy Few, also Compulsion Games is the company behind We Happy Few, and they are also acquiring them. And then the last studio that they announced was Playground Games. And they've been around since 2010. They're an indie company from the UK, and they actually started the Forza Horizon series.
Yeah. And what's funny enough, I remember when Forza Horizon, the first one came out, it pretty much is people from Need for Speed Underground 2 and some other racing games got together, and they're like, fuck it, we're going to make our own studio, and they did, and it's just taken off. I actually assumed they were part of Microsoft to begin with because they were always making Forza games, but now they are officially doing that for Microsoft. They have been acquired by Microsoft, and they said they're making a second IP that's not Forza Horizon, and will take the open-world racing game in a new direction, they said. So, interesting. Right. There was another one. It's a new studio called The Initiative. That was what it was, from Santa Monica. It's in Santa Monica. It's called The Initiative. There's nothing about it really leaked yet. They just said it's going to be led by Daryl Gallagher, who is a visionary storyteller and who's worked on some of the most iconic franchises over the last 20 years, such as Tomb Raider. That's who we know is going to be running that studio. That makes